For more on all the developments in Ukraine, I'm joined by William Courtney. He's a foreign relations analyst who served as special assistant to the president for Russia and Ukraine. He's also a former U.S. ambassador to Georgia and Kazakhstan. Vladimir Putin, why don't we start there? He was in Crimea. He's pledging all this aid, billions. He says he wants to end the bloodshed in Ukraine. How likely is that?
Well, what we've seen so far is still a mystery. The trucks are painted white, but they're accompanied by military helicopters. There's a Russian military rocket launcher accompanying the trucks. At first, the Russians said the International Committee for the Red Cross was working with Russia. The ICRC then denied that they had really had access to it. At first, it looked like the trucks were going to the Ukrainian government-controlled part of Ukraine. Then suddenly they diverted. Now they're headed toward Luhansk, which is controlled by the rebels, but they've stopped before the border. So there's a maximum amount of obfuscation.
How's this thing going to be played out in the end, do you think?
It's still unclear what the Kremlin wants to do. Over the last 6 months, several times the Kremlin has looked like it was going to be more active, maybe invade militarily with conventional military forces. Then it seemed to pull back. Sometimes the Russian rhetoric would be more positive. For example, today in Crimea, Putin said, stand confrontation with the rest of the world. But we've heard that sort of thing before, so it's still unclear.
Let me ask about this this need, though, for humanitarian aid. It's real. I mean, they're without power, out of water, the food's dwindling, a lot of these people under siege. Shouldn't somebody be coming to their aid at some point?
The Ukrainian government is shipping humanitarian aid in there as well.
But it seems like they're getting a late start. I mean, Russia's obviously gotten a lot of PR about this.
Russia's gotten a lot of PR about this. The equipment and food and other things that would go in there would be helpful also for the beleaguered rebels there because they're out of supplies as well. So how much of it would go to the people there, how much would go to the rebels, that's a little bit unclear.
Let me ask you about, since we last spoke, we last spoke about Ukraine, everybody was talking about Ukraine, but now we've got Iraq, we've got all these different issues, these flashpoints all around the world. I mean, even since the last time we spoke in Afghanistan, John Kerry had to go and mediate a presidential election there. Do you think that people have taken their eye off the ball in respect to Ukraine? And I know that your wife is of Ukrainian descent. I mean, do you feel like the West is kind of like backed off some, or what do you see there? Because it doesn't seem like it's front and center like it was.
It's not front and center in the sense of being the only issue, but it has commanded a lot of attention in Europe because this is really right in Europe's doorstep. It's right on the eastern edge of Europe. As a result of the Ukrainian crisis and Russian aggression there, NATO has suddenly taken on new life. Europeans are changing their attitudes toward Russia. So this really is still front and center despite some of the other conflicts.
How about the sanctions? Do you think they're having much of an impact vis-a-vis the Russia's imposed sanctions, the U.S. And the West sanctions on Russia?
An interesting indication today was that Rosneft, the large state-owned oil company in Russia, publicly said it was going to request $42 billion in loan assistance from the Russian government because it was now unable to borrow long-term in Western capital markets. So that's a sign that the sanctions are having a broader impact than people thought at the beginning.
Ambassador Courtney, always a delight to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.
You're quite welcome.